Now we can discuss, because we understood what are the different factors affecting bearing capacity, we can try to now discuss about that. What are the factors affecting bearing capacity? Factors. I could have discussed this earlier, but I just deferred so that you can understand once you do some numerical example. The first factor which affects the bearing capacity is the soil type. Based on the soil type, then it is the depth, that is the location and size and shape of the footing. The third one is important factor is the, as you have seen in this previous case, the location of groundwater table. Okay. For considering vertical loads. Okay. Again, if I have got inclined load, that load direction also, the ground condition, load condition, everything is going to influence. But these are the main three important factors which affect. Okay, we have got so many other things which you can refer to, but you will just understand these three factors. Now we will go to say you have seen Terzaghis theory. It's very clear for vertical loads for shallow foundations how you can evaluate the factor. What is that bearing capacity using the expressions given by Terzaghi, and we have to see whether it is a general shear failure or a local shear failure. Now we will try to take up some more details. Okay, we will go to the next theory. Next theory is Meyerhof theory. Meyerhof was a professor from Canada. He has worked extensively. On bearing capacity of soils, and we will try to see the comparison. We will try to see the comparison of a footing let us say this is a shallow foundation. I should draw the width as more than the now let us try to see how comparatively both side by side will try to draw the. Terzaghi assumed that your failure surface will not extend beyond the ground surface. Therefore, this is the failure pattern. We try to take an equivalent surcharge at the footing level. This is gamma into D. This is the surcharge. Now this is the depth of footing. Now we'll try to see how the failure pattern. This is the zone of radial shear. This is the elastic zone. This is zone 1, this is zone 2 and zone 3. Now we have this from here to the left is your Terzaghi's theory. This is for shallow foundation. Now we will try to see for the deep foundation. This is the width of foundation B. Now what happens to Marov considered that the failure surface extends up to the ground surface. He considered the failure surface to extend to the ground surface, and he tried to draw the failure lines like this. Actually, this goes up to this portion. He considered one failure surface. Now we'll have the radial zone here. At any position, this is 90 minus of 5. Now on this surface, for his analysis, he considered the shear force, which is trying to resist. There will be a normal force P naught, and this is the shear force S naught, and this inclination is 90 minus 5. Okay. Now he considered the failure surface to extend up to the ground surface. This is Marov theory. Now here he considered only vertical loads. Terzaghi considered only vertical loads. Here he considered even inclined loads. Okay, we will try to see what are the bearing capacity factors he has given, how he considered all those things. Now let us try to see. This is for a shallow foundation. Similar thing he has given. He has extended this to a deeper foundation. Now I will not spend much time on that. You can refer to any standard textbooks. Now we will try to see what are the depth factors, what is the expression he has given, and how to derive the expression and how to get your ultimate stress, ultimate bearing capacity. For the vertical load, he has given CNC into, he has used the shape factor SC and also the depth factor. The shape factor was later considered by Terzaghi. Now he has introduced an additional term called the depth factor, and this is nothing but gamma into D. Okay, this is nothing but gamma into the subcharge into NQ into SQ and BQ. These are the two factors which are coming, depth factor and shape factor. Plus, and this is also a new one because this was not considered in Terzaghi's theory, the shape factor. Only in the first term and the third term you had considered the shape factor. And this is 0.5 into gamma B N gamma into S gamma and D gamma. And for inclined loads, the ultimate bearing capacity is C into NC into depth factor. Because there is an inclination, he has not considered the shear factor here, and for reasons known to Terzaghi, I think to Mehra, the shear factor is missing. I am giving whatever he has presented and which is well accepted. Where NQ is equal to e to the power of phi tan phi into tan square of 45 degrees minus phi by 2, one shot minus plus, then NC. These bearing capacity factors are given by this expression. They are slightly different compared to what Terzaghi has given. Slight different. NC is equal to NQ minus 1 into cot phi. I think it's something similar to Terzaghi's expressions. And this is slightly different. Last one, N gamma. There's an additional thing. Students, you need to understand plane strain, because it was considered for a relatively lengthier footing, that means infinite footing. Therefore, plane strain conditions were prevailing. What is meant by plane condition? Plane strain condition and plane stress condition you need to understand. Plane strain condition are typical examples given like this. Okay, you got a footing, you see you got a wall. Okay, this is a wall. Okay, this is a wall which is running for a greater length. Okay. Now the footing corresponding to this. Now this is the footing corresponding to a wall. Therefore, in one direction compared to this width, this is the width. This is the width. Compared to the width, this direction it is lengthier. Therefore, this can be, this is y and x, and in the perpendicular direction z. Okay. This can be simplified as a two-dimensional problem. A three-dimensional problem can be converted into a two-dimensional problem. The strain in the one direction is assumed to be very less and neglected. Therefore, it becomes a simplified case of a two-dimensional problem. Therefore, such kind of cases are even a retaining wall, or it may be a dam. So if I got a retaining wall, I got a retaining wall like this, vertical wall, okay, in this direction. Similar conditions are prevailing if you take any section. The meaning of the plane strain thing, if I take any section here, if I take a section like this here, if I take a section like this, the state of stress is same at any section. Therefore, I need not worry taking the third dimension. I can take a two-dimensional, it can be converted from a three-dimensional to a two-dimensional. Therefore, this, because the stress conditions are same at any section you are going to, because of the conditions being same, therefore plane strain conditions are assumed. Therefore, the value of these, all these three things, bearing capacity factors, are a function of phi. Therefore, what is this value of phi I need to use? Should I use whatever value you get from phi triaction? Means you do a triaction test, you can do a shear test and you get this. This is obtained from the laboratory. Should I use this, or you should use something different? Therefore, he gave an expression for the modified expression for this. What is phi plane PS? Is nothing but phi plane strain In short, I can write it as 5 PS is equal to 1.1 minus 0.1 into B by L into 5 triaxial. Therefore, whatever value you get from your laboratory experiment, from the triaxial test, shear test, okay, I need to multiply by this quantity so that I get this. Based on this value, I am going to substitute here and get my Derrick capacity factors. Or I can, he has also given in the tabular form, similar to what Terzaghi has done. You can use the auxiliary table or you can use these expressions and evaluate it. Now, what are these factors? These shape factors and depth factors. He has given various expressions. Let us see what are those expressions. Shape factors. See, one need not remember these things. If you have an understanding, you can refer to any standard textbooks or standard literature. You will get all these factors. Depth factors. Inclination factors. The shape factor for the first term is known as 1 plus 0.2 Kp into B by L, where Kp is the coefficient of earth pressure for a passive case. Then for phi equal to 0, SQ equal to S gamma equal to 1. Hence, when you got a purely cohesive soil, this becomes 1. There is no effect. Then for phi greater than 10 degrees, SQ is equal to S gamma equal to 1 plus 0.1 B by L. Now we will see what are the expressions given for depth factor. BC is equal to 1 plus 0.2 into root Kp into D by B. The root is only for the coefficient of passive earth pressure. Then the depth factor when phi is equal to 0, dq is equal to d gamma equal to 1. Therefore, for a clay soil, what happens? The effect is not there. The shape of the depth factor becomes 1. That's what he analyzed. But Bryn Johnson, as I told you, gave a very comprehensive analysis where he has taken many of the factors, including the depth factor, shape factor, then inclination factor. Then this inclination factors, IC equal to IQ equal to 1 minus of alpha by 90 and I gamma equal to 1 minus of alpha by pi. And what is alpha? Alpha is the angle of resultant measured from vertical axis. Then what is Kp? Kp is equal to tan square alpha. It is tan square alpha, which is equal to tan square of 45 degrees plus pi by 2. Student, as a student, when I was a student, I studied on my own. I was wondering how this inclination, I used to think there is an inclination load, okay, inclined load. But I was wondering from where the incline, maybe the wind load, maybe the inclined load. But later I could understand that the inclination is going to come, the inclined load is going to come in situations, please understand these situations. Whenever you got a foundation inside a building, maybe this is a building, you may have a machinery, the vehicles may be moving in the horizontal direction. You may have some machinery which is moving or vehicles moving. Now you have got the vertical load, this is in the plan, okay, you have got the vertical load which is coming from the dead weight, and to the foundation you have the lateral force, okay, this is acting in the horizontal direction. This horizontal force plus the vertical force is going to lead to an inclined force. The horizontal force is the causation for your inclined load, okay, therefore it is not load which is acting in inclined way, it is the resultant of the vertical load which is coming because of the dead weight of the building superstructure onto the footing and on the foundation. Very near to the foundation, if you have any vehicles moving or an equipment moving, or there is a transmission of some horizontal force, that force is going to, the combination of vertical and horizontal force is going to give you an inclined load, okay. For that we need to consider the inclination. This is about the Meyerhoff's theory. We can take similar problems and work out, it's not a difficult thing. Now we need to go to, see, we have seen what are the methods of evaluating the bearing capacity. Bearing capacity can be evaluated by the tables, bearing capacity tables in which are available in code. We have seen the analytical methods. Analytical methods. Now for your syllabus, we have seen this. You can refer to local building codes. In India, we have got National Building Code. All these values are presumptive values. They are recorded there based on the local experience, because in India we know what is the topography. We got black and soil in this region, we got the red soils in this region, we got sandy soil. Based on that, we can they have recommended based on the experience certain values of the bearing capacity. They are the presumed values of the bearing capacity. They are called presumptive bearing values. Now we can refer to that and we can get for a preliminary understanding of what is going to happen if you have a building constructed there. Analytical methods, we have seen Terzaghi's theory based on the Prandtl synthesis. Then we went to Meyerhoff theory. Okay, now we'll try to see you have got plate load test. Or plate load test, okay. What is the use of plate load test and how the plate load test is conducted? We'll try to see how we can find out. Then you got model test or prototype. We'll see these things. We have also got correlations with SPT N value and cone penetration values. We'll try to see these recommendations. The sixth one, let us not worry about, it's only laboratory test, it's basically meant for clays. We'll now go to this. Okay, we already completed these two. Okay, you can refer to these tables, and in a detailed way we have seen all the methods which are there in the syllabus. Now we'll go to this plate load test. We'll discuss in detail about the plate load test. Now, what is a plate load test? We'll try to discuss about plate load test. Now, people started realizing that when the foundation is constructed, actual foundation is constructed, it is going to stress the soil and it is going to create settlements, there will be deformations, and it is going to develop the failure surfaces as the plastic equilibrium is developed, and you are going to have the resistance mobilized, and you are going to have the bearing capacity, means it is trying to bear the load. Students, you may feel that these bearing capacity equations are simply theoretical and there may be a lot of deviations from the actual thing. No. In one of the incident, okay, in Transcona region, there was a Transcona elevator, grain elevator, which was constructed the beginning of 19th century. In 1913, it actually failed. When it failed, what happened? They tried to restore it, and even today it is working. It's a typical case of general shear failure. And finally it tilted to one direction. Tilted, there was heaving of the soil. You can see all this information in the literature, in the internet you can get all this information. Now why I am trying to refer to this? They try to do a plate load test and try to evaluate, and they evaluated certain value of the loading that it can take, and this is a typical cross section how it looks. This was there were vertical bends, there were 13 bends like this, and 5 rows perpendicular to that. Okay, 5 rows and 13 bends. Okay, one adjacent to the other. Add 13 bins like this. In this, okay, there is to store wheat. Okay, there are big bins. Okay, I am just drawing a diagram because this is how it looks from a distance. The 13 into y. Therefore, 13 into 5, totally 65 vertical bins were there. And at the foundation level, okay, this foundation, okay, there was a mat foundation. There was a mat foundation. Now let us say this is the footing. Let us say this the footing was taken to a depth. There was a raft foundation. This was a raft foundation. Now they have done a plate load test. At the foundation level, they conducted a plate load test. Now when you consider a small portion and you have a small plate, it's a plate which is loaded. Okay, you take a small plate at the footing level and try to draw here. Now what I will do is, I excavate the soil at the ground level. Wherever you plan that you need to have a foundation, there you place a plate and you try to load it. Okay, how the loading arrangement is done, I will give you all those details. Now in this plate load test, when they conducted the plate load test, this is going to get stressed and you are going to have a pressure valve corresponding to, you can have different pressure valves, you can have different pressure valves. Okay, now a significant pressure valve is one which is, let us say this is 0.2 times of Q. This is the load intensity that is coming here. This is 0.2 Q. This is the significant pressure valve. Now if I actually do a test and I get these details, okay, I am stressing the soil which is equal to approximately not greater than 2 times of the width of the whatever plate that I am going to stress it. Now if I actually construct a footing here, okay, and if I try to, this is the actual footing, let me use another color. If this is the actual footing, so this is the footing. Now this is the column. Now what happens when I try to load it? It is trying to stress a soil which is encompassing approximately 1.5 times 2 times of B, which is, let us say this is B1, okay, this is B2, okay, this is B2, or BF. Okay, actually, let us call this as BP. This is the width of the plate, and this is the width of the foundation. Now, the limitation of this plate load test there, it has stressed the soil, which is a very small volume of the soil, which is equal to twice the maximum, twice of the width of the plate. Therefore, it has not stressed the actual soil which is going to be stressed when you have a footing. That's what happened here. Below there was actually a clay which was not considered, and because this is what happened when it actually was loaded, it started tilting, and people have recorded the photos and the videos of when it started tilting from a distance. They could see that it was slowly yielding, and this was restored. What happened? Finally it got tilted, and there was heaving of the material here. Heaving of the material. Quite good quantity of material was heaved, and finally it tilted. Okay, there was sinking of 24 feet. Okay, this was restored by using jacks. Okay. Now, one of the limitation of this plate load test is that it is a model test, and it is not going to give the actual information of the soil which is going to be actually compressed when you are trying to have a actual footing. But it gives some idea about, if it is a clay, you can get some idea how it is going to get compressed. You are not going to have much variation between the plate load test results and the actual footing load. Okay, but in a dense soil like a granular material, it is going to be different. Therefore, we need to make some corrections. Then, based on the exploration, the investigation procedures, because when the transconal drain elevator is constructed, the investigation procedures were not developed, and they didn't have much idea. That was the initial stages when they started developing plate load test and improvising how to understand the soil behavior. That was the initial stages. Luckily, they could restore it because it was in a dense soil. There was another failure which is called the Fargo grain elevator in somewhere 50s. Okay. By the time sufficient development had taken place in soil mechanics, and the investigative procedures were developed, in spite of that, the Fargo grain elevator got crushed completely, became rumbles. They were seeing these, in fact, they were monitoring the settlements. Instead of monitoring the settlements, when they saw it was very alarming, they were not bothered. It got settled, and finally it got crushed. The complete grain and the concrete rubbles was left out, and finally they learned something that we need to be very careful whenever the settlements are very alarming. Settlements also can lead to a lot of failures. And one more important information, students, there are so many failures because of settlements, but they are not reported. Only shear failure is, they think that shear failure is a very important thing, but it is not so. I told you, allowable bearing capacity based on both shear failure and also safe against settlement is also an important criteria. Therefore, we should not allow more load beyond certain things to see that the settlements are within the tolerable limits. Now, we will try to see what are the important things in this plate load test. We will go into the details of the plate load test, what are the sizes of the plate load test that are used, how the plate load test is going to, the plates are, it's not just ordinary plate, you will have some modifications to that plate, it will have some serrations, it will have grooves at the bottom, and what should be the sizes, and how the loading arrangement is done, how you are going to place it, how the pit is opened, where you are going to place this plate, how you are going to make the arrangement of the loading, and how you are going to record the settlements, and how that can be, what are the precautions that are to be done, what are the testing procedures, up to what time each load increment is done. All those things are to be understood, and it's an elaborate test, and how you are going to get a reaction using the Newton's third law. You need to understand how to, when you want to load something, you need some support so that you have, using a loading jack, you apply the load and you are going to transfer back to that. Unless you have some reaction, you cannot transfer the load, because you cannot load this plate. Therefore, what arrangement has to be done to do the plate load test? We'll look into the details in a further. Students, now we'll discuss about the plate load test. Now in the plate load test we try to use a plate as shown. Okay, it's a plate with a slight modification that will have checkers or grooves. Okay, the dimensions are given like this. Okay, it will be projected. This will come to the bottom. Why this is done? Because when you are placing it in a pit, okay, it should have some sufficient grip so that it will not slide. Now this is of mild steel, or we can use even concrete blocks. If we use concrete blocks, what happens? If this is the width of the plate, now the thickness should be at least half of this width, because you should have a sufficient width. Okay. Whereas mild steel is having more strength, we can use thin plates. Usually the plate dimensions will vary from 300 mm to 750 mm. Sometimes we use 2-3 plates placed one over the other. Either it can be square or circular this thing. For circular plates are usually used for highway projects. Now in a typical plate load test, we excavate a pit. Usually the depth will be at the whatever planned foundation level. At that, okay, the size of the pit should be, if you are using a plate of width BP, it should be the width of the plate. The width of the pit should be 5 times of the width of the plate, and the depth is as per our requirement. There we are going to level it, and we are going to place 5 mm thick sand so that it becomes a sand cushion, so that there will be evenness. Then you are going to place this plate. Now you are going to, if you see in plan, this is in plan, this is how it looks. Okay, we will have steps. Okay, you are going to go down, and the plate is placed in the middle. That has to be aligned so that it is in the center. Now what you are going to do is, now you need to load this. Whenever you want to load, okay, you know Newton's third law, action and reaction are equal and opposite. When I want to load, I need some reaction. Okay, to get that reaction, what I am going to do? I am going to use a gravity loading platform, which is also called a Kent ledge. Usually this is one of the Kent ledge. Of late we have got the reaction trusses, which is more popular. The gravity load platform, what we do is, we try to create a platform like this. Okay, we are going to use a joist, main girder. This is the section. What we are going to do, we are going to place it in such a direction such that in the cross direction we can have cross beams, cross joists. On that we are going to place a plank. This is a plank. On the plank, okay, we will have series of girders perpendicular to this board, and in the perpendicular direction on the second layer we will have placed cross joists in the cross direction. On that you have got this plank. On that you are going to place sandbags. These are sandbags. Or you can have even concrete blocks, because we need to have sufficient weight. Now how much weight I need to place depends upon what type of load I am going to do. Means what loading, whether it is a 5 ton capacity plate load test, or 10 ton or 50 ton or 100 ton. Usually that will be prescribed by the client. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to create a masonry post, masonry wall on both sides, and in the center we are going to place this loading post. On that we are going to place this hydraulic jack, and this is connected to the this is the gauge to record what is the pressure. Through a hydraulic mechanism we are going to pump it, and we are going to pump the fluid through the tube, and we are going to apply the load. When this load is applied here, what happens? Okay, there will be this will move up. Okay, well, there will be a vertical movement, and therefore you will have a opposite reaction. Therefore you can apply the load. Now I need to note down the settlement. Okay, now what I am going to do, I am going to place a datum bar. We are going to place at least 2 dial gauges, diametrical opposite, or sometimes we place, if it is, this is the plate, we place at 3 places. Okay, at least 3 dial gauges. Okay, we are going to at least have 2 dial gauges. We are going to take the settlement. Okay, these are dial gauges meant for noting down the settlement of the plate. Now how we are going to do this loading? First, when you place the plate, okay, before placing we are going to place a thin layer of sand cushion. On that we are going to place the plate, and we are making all this arrangement. Then you're going to apply a seating load. A seating load of 70 gram per cm square or 0.7 ton per meter square. This load is applied. This is done so that the plate settles uniformly. Initial settlement is uniform. Then we remove that load. We remove the seating load. Then making all the contact arrangements. Okay, once it is ready, you are going to apply the load. For example, this we usually go up to 1 kg per cm square. Means this is approximately 100 kPa. Means you are going to load. See, usually the load which is going to come from buildings in the 5 to 10 story buildings will not exceed 75 kPa. Therefore, we are going to load to that. Now we are going to divide this load. Okay, in terms of tons. Okay, if it's a 10 ton loading. Okay, or say, let us say it's a 50 ton loading test. Okay, I divide into 5 stages, 5 load intervals. Every 10 ton. Okay, you are going to give a load increment of 10 ton. Okay, convert into stress so that you get the requisite thing. What you are going to do? You apply the load and you with the time you note down time versus dial gauge reading. Once the dial gauge reading comes, okay, you are going to use dial gauge with a sensitive, and when the settlement reduces to not more than 0.02 mm per minute, then you are going to stop that load. Usually for a sandy soil, okay, or a gravelly soil, or it's a collineous material, see 1 hour is enough. But for a clay material, we have to apply a load, at least we have to leave it for 24 hours. Okay, clay requires more time because it is a time dependent deformation behavior. Therefore clay we allow one day. And another thing is, for each load increment, if it is a clay, we are going to note down at regular intervals of time what is the settlement for these 2 dial gauges. We usually start from 1 minute, then 2.25, then 4, 6, 9, 16, 25, then every 1 hour. Like this we will go on doubling the interval. Okay, we are going to take at a certain intervals, and you are going to continue for each load increment. These readings have to be taken because we need to ascertain that this settlement is ceasing for that particular load increment. This is the case for clay. Whereas for sand, this requirement is not there. Just note down, you apply the load and you see how much settlement. Okay, you know the initial dial gauge reading. After 1 hour, you will try to see what is the dial gauge reading. Okay, once you find that the settlements are not more than this per minute, then you can stop it and go to the next load increment. Then you are going to go from 10 to 20 ton. Like this, you are going to do it in 5 stages, and each load increment that is done, you are going to note down what is the settlement. Then I am going to plot the load settlement curve. Okay, before going to that, this is a calculator I told you. This becomes more easy. In of late, people are using the reaction truss. In the reaction truss, what you are doing, we need to get reaction, because when I apply a load to the through the load jack, okay, to apply load to the plate, what I need a reaction. Therefore, to get a reaction, making this arrangement is very difficult. This is more handy. You can transport it and you can reuse it again. Therefore, when I make this truss arrangement, what I do is I try to use anchors, and I try to have cross girders, and you will have semicircular troughs. It will be something like this. It will be semicircular troughs, and you are going to drive anchors into this. Okay, so that the truss, okay, is not going to move and it is anchored properly. And this is, and also we can use ropes. Okay, see, if this is the truss, okay, we are going to use ropes and tie it in the opposite direction so that we have lateral stability, so that it doesn't have turn to the side. Therefore, you are going to have guy ropes, and you are going to see that it is held properly, and vertically it should not move up because it should give a reaction. Therefore, you are going to anchor it down into the earth by using anchors. The test procedure is similar what you have explained here. Okay, the same thing applies here. Now we will go to the results. Now with the results, what I am going to do? Earlier when I was discussing the different types of shear failure, we could see that how local shear failure and general shear failure can be identified from the plate load test. Now, let me see how the results look. Now, if I got a dense granular material, how does it's nothing but a stress strain curve. How does it look? When you have a compressible soil like a loose sand, how does it look? Now in a dense material, you will have a clear yielding. You will have sufficient load taken, then it starts yielding. Now when do you stop this? Okay, once the plate starts settling, okay, after 5 load increments or 6 load increments, once it starts yielding, okay, it will be settling. Once it has reached a yield point, it starts settling and it will start yielding. Now for this is for a dense sand, dense granular material, cohesionless material or granular soil. Now for a loose soil, okay, it keeps on settling, okay, there will be a slight curve, okay, initially then it curves like this. Now for a clay, we have a curve or something like this, something which yields, but what happens, load intensity, load taking capacity will be less compared to a dense granular material. This is for a cozy soil. Actually this will not yield, it keeps continuing, but relatively you can see some curvature. So this is for a loose material. Now here there is no clear yield. Now to get that yield, what we can do is we can plot this same data. If I plot it in a log scale, this is a arithmetic scale. Now when I plot on log plot, okay, this is rho, this is Q. What happens? I get the data points will be like this. Okay, then you have a change in your slope. Okay, you have the change in slope. Wherever this change in slope takes place, this is the ultimate bending capacity. Here we can have a change in it. Okay, this point we can be taken as the ultimate bending capacity. Okay, the every data of load intensity versus settlement can be plotted like this. This is a very convenient way of plotting this. Now, this has got certain limitations, as I told already, that in a plate load test, okay, now when you do this plate load test, the soil encompassed is approximately 2 times the width of the, if this is the width of the plate, okay, you can stress the soil up to maximum of 2 times of the plate. Now the actual foundation will be somewhere here. Okay. Now if this foundation width is say BF, now it is going to encompass larger area. In case your soil profile is such that you have a layered system where you have got a cohesive soil which is clayey soil, which is going to be highly compressible. When you do a plate load test, you are not able to stress the soil which is likely to compress, and this may lead to erroneous results, okay, or a not complete picture about the settlement behavior. This is what reflected in the transconal grain elevator failure, which I already explained to you. Then in clays, what happens? There is no difference between the, if you try to take the, when you try to linearly interpolate between the plate ultimate load carrying capacity and whatever the footing is going to bear. Okay, if you got a clay soil, okay, you will have the ultimate, QF of the foundation is approximately equal to QF of the plate. Whereas for a granular material or sandy soil, okay, people have found that the ultimate bearing capacity of the foundation is whatever you get from the load settlement curve, you have to multiply by the width of the foundation to the width of the plate. Therefore, this ratio has to be, this is the multiplying factor so that it gets enhanced. Therefore, the load carrying capacity is going to be more than the load carrying capacity which is found from the yield load from the plate load test results. Now, if the soil is more dense, this effect will be more. Okay, this is some of the limitation. And in clay soil, the problem is that, okay, it is a time dependent behavior because this is short term test. It doesn't reflect because clay is nothing but creep. Okay, because of the load which if it is there, it is sustained because the footing or the structure loading is transferred through the footing will be always sustained. Therefore, the sustained behavior, because of the sustained load, the settlement behavior is going to be different. Therefore, the reflection or the response of the clay medium to the loading is going to be different compared to a dense granular material or a granular soil. Therefore, that is one of the limitations. But fair enough, you get some idea about what is going to happen. Now, Housel try to, there are other correlations or other corrections which are to be done. We will discuss about. You can also find out, okay, two things. You can find out what is the ultimate bearing capacity or the final bearing capacity, and also we can find out what is the foundation settlement. Okay, these are the two things that we can get for the foundation from the plate load test. Now, how to get this? How to get this? Okay, now the corrections are into dP plus 0.3 by dF I'm right. Okay, this is the expression which is to be used for making the correction into this sum of this is actually dF. We need to use this expression. Okay, now if I want to say I got the plate load settlement from the plate. Okay, now when there is a yield, okay, I got the. Okay, now I know at this what is the settlement. When there is a yielding taking place, what is the settlement of the plate? Now, what will be the settlement of the footing can be found out from this expression. This is a question mark. I can use this relationship. I know what is my width of the plate. I know what is the width of the foundation, what is the width of the plate. I can substitute in this expression and I can obtain what is the settlement of the footing. Now let us try to see this through a problem. Before going to a numerical example, we will try to see how we can also find out by doing model tests. Now what I do is, Housel try to do two model tests, plate load tests on two different size plates, different size plates, and using those data, let us say I use 300 mm plate and I use 450 mm plate. Then from this I can get two equations. We try to give that expression for finding out the load. Q is equal to AQ plus perimeter into S. Now what is A, what is P, what is Q and what is S will define. Q is the ultimate load. A is the area of the plate. Then P is the perimeter of the plate. P is the perimeter of the plate. And Q is the stress, okay, it is called bearing pressure. and S is called the perimeter shear. That means when you have a plate, when you try to load it, this is the Q which is going to take at the perimeter along the boundary. So if you, this is the plate, along the perimeter, all along the perimeter you will have some shear. Okay, that is the contribution, the shear stress, shear load, and this is the bearing load. At the center, for this area, there will be a bearing. Therefore, the load from the bearing plus the perimeter shear load, that put together gives you the total load. Now, when I have two plates, I have different size of the plates. I got perimeter shear and perimeter and the area known. These are the two unknowns. If I know what is the total load at failure, therefore what I can do is I can form two simultaneous equations. I can find out Q and S. Then I can use this for the actual plate, for the actual foundation. Now once I know for a particular soil what are the values of Q and S, now I know what is the foundation. Foundation BF. Okay. For that I know what is my perimeter, I know what is my area of the foundation and the perimeter of the foundation. Then I can substitute here, I know Q and S from these two simultaneous equations. Then I can find out what is the load taken by the footing. Then I can get the ultimate bearing of the footing by dividing this load from the footing by the area of the footing. Then I get my ultimate load taken by the ultimate load intensity of the foundation. Now let us take a numerical example and try to understand this. Students will try to understand the plate load test data and how to interpret it by using the Housel's method. Now in this numerical example, we'll try to work out a numerical example. We'll try to do two numerical examples. In the first numerical example, we'll try to see how Housel's method can be used to find out the ultimate load taken by the plate. Now in the numerical example, the data is given is, you got two plates. The first plate is having a diameter of 750 mm and the settlement of the plate is 15 mm and the load taken is 150 kN. For a specific settlement, you need to do this test. The second plate is having a diameter of 300 mm and the specimen, the settlement risk of this means you have stopped the experiment at 15 mm. The settlement should be same for both the trials and the load taken is 50 kN. Now I need to find out, determine the load on a circular footing. The circular footing is 1.2 meter diameter. And what is the settlement of the footing? That will cause, no, sorry, settlement, okay. Now that will cause, this also is causing a settlement equal to 15 mm because it should be comparable. Now what I have to do, I have to find out using Housel's, as per Housel's method, okay. Q is equal to A into Q plus P into S. Now let us try to, we know what is A. A is area. For the first trial, for the first plate 1, what is going to happen? Okay, it is 150 is the load and the area is pi by 4 into, what is the, this is when converted to meters, it becomes 0.75 meter, pi by 4 into this one. This is the area into Q. Q is not known, I need to find out. Plus the perimeter is pi into D, pi into the diameter is 0.75 into S. Okay, I get my first expression. Plate 2. This is 50 on the left hand side and the plate area is 0.2 pi by 4 into 0.3 square into Q plus pi into 0.3 into S. This is the second expression. Now when I solve this, I get Q is equal to the simple solving simultaneous expressions. I get I'm not so simplified. Okay, so some value of a Q. Now using this Q, I can find out what is S. Okay, I have got Q is 92.8 kilonewton per meter square and S is equal to 46.27 kilonewton per meter. Now the unit should be consistent. Okay, see here this perimeter is in terms of linear units. Okay, the perimeter share should be kilonewton per meter because the meter and meter gets cancelled. Therefore, I'll get in kilonewton. Here area is in meter square. This should be in kilonewton per meter square. Therefore, when I multiply, I will get only kilonewton. Therefore, kilonewton plus kilonewton. Therefore, this is kilonewton. Okay. So now, when I substitute for the actual footing, okay. Now, what is my ultimate load of the footing? I need to substitute. Okay, what is the area? Pi by 4 into the diameter is 1.2. Okay, pi by 4 into 1.2 square into Q is 92.8 plus perimeter shear is 46.27, and what is the perimeter? Pi into 1.2 into 46.27. I'll get the load taken by the at the same 15 mm settlement. This is the load taken by the plate. Okay, this is how I can, if I divide by the area, I'll be getting what is the ultimate load or ultimate stress. That can be done. Okay. Now we'll go to the next variety of problem where you got a plate load test data where you have recorded the settlement versus the intensity of loading. Students will go to the next variety of problem wherein the plate load test details are given. This is a plate load test with load data as 4.5, 9, 18, 27, 36, 45 and 54. They go up to 54 kilonewton. And the corresponding settlement details in mm. The settlements are corresponding 0.75 for the first load, 1.25, 2, 3.5, 5.38, 7.75, 10.75. Now is asking plot this load settlement curve and determine the bearing capacity. And load that can be taken by the column footing, the load taken by the column footing. The size is 1.2 meter by 1.2 meter, it's a square footing, and the allowable settlement, corresponding allowable settlement is 2 centimeter or 20 mm. Now what I need to do is, since the area of the footing has been given, I can convert this into the load intensity. Now I'll prepare the table. Now I'll write load Q in kilonewton, then load intensity, Q in kilonewton per meter square, then you got the settlement, settlement S or rho. Now the first trial 4.5, then 9, 18, 27, 36, 45 and 54. The corresponding, when I convert it to load intensity, it comes to 50, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 and 600. Okay, the settlement, anyway you know the settlements. Now we will plot the load settlement curve. Anyway, the settlements are known. Okay, I am not going to repeat that. We will try to use this data and we will try to plot the curve. Okay. Now when I plot the load settlement curve, you may question me, sir, why you are plotting? You can also plot like this. It's a convention. Okay, the same thing is plotted because what is happening? The load is increasing, the settlement is increasing with the increasing load, therefore it is plotted like this. Now this is the settlement rho and this is the load intensity Q. Okay, when you plot the data, you get a curve like this. Okay, I did not plot all these things. Okay, you will get a curve. From the load settlement curve, okay, what you are going to do? See, the settlement of the plate can be found out. Okay, now settlement of the plate can be found out from this. Okay, when there is a yield. So the best way of plotting is you plot it in a log scale, plot it on the log scale and log scale. Then clearly you get a bilinear curve. Corresponding to that, you can find out what is the plate settlement and also what is the ultimate load of the footing plate. From this, you can, I'm just showing, okay, it is a, we don't know where it comes. From that, you use the expression rho of plate is equal to rho of footing. Already I had given that expression. The okay, now you got footing, then you get footing, the width of the footing will come here and the plate will come here. Okay, it just interchanges. Okay, you have to remember this expression. From this you find out what is the settlement of the plate. Okay, the width of the plate BP is so much? BP is 0.3 meters or 30 centimeter. Then width of the footing is 1.2. He has given the settlement of the footing. Settlement of the footing is 20 mm. Therefore, I need to find out what is the settlement of the plate. Now, actually, it's a very tricky thing. Okay, now instead of doing like this, okay, you have plotted in a natural scale. Okay, now what you have to do here is asked in a different way. Instead of getting the yield point, okay, now he is giving the settlement. Okay, now plot the curve in the natural scale. Now what you are going to do is, you have got this settlement. Okay, this is the settlement of the footing. Corresponding to this settlement of the footing, okay, you substitute here, find out this. Okay, well, you find out this and corresponding settlement of the plate. Okay, you find out what is the ultimate load of the plate. Okay. Now when I work out, I get the settlement of the plate is equal to, this is some unicity problem. When I substitute here, I get 7.81 millimeters. Once I substitute that value there, okay, I will get corresponding to this settlement of 7.81 millimeter. The intensity of loading from this thing is the corresponding ultimate load of the plate comes to, from the graph, I got 505 kilonewton per meter square. Okay, I have to read it from this. Once you get this, okay, now this is the, because it's a clay medium, okay, now what happens, the ultimate load of the footing is equal, approximately equal to the ultimate load of the plate. Okay, I can take that value. Then if you want this is the intensity. Now I want the load taken by the footing is equal to the intensity of loading multiplied by the area of footing. Okay, now I am getting this value from here. Okay, I will substitute this value, that is 505 into the area of the foundation is, this side is 1.2 meters, therefore multiply by 1.2 into 1.2, I get a load equal to. Now in this problem, students, okay, you have to understand, he has given the load, okay, you have to try to divide by the area to get the load intensity, and you are going to plot the settlement versus load intensity, you get the curve. Now here what he has asked is, he has given the prescribed settlement of the footing. Footing settlement is 20 mm. For this, what load that can be allowed on the footing? Now what you have to do for this settlement, okay, read out what is the load taken by the plate. That will be the load taken by the footing. Then when I multiply by the area of the plate or the footing, then I will be getting what is the load taken by the footing. Okay. Therefore, for a restricted settlement of 20 mm, this is the load that can be allowed on the footing. This is the problem. In some other problems, they will ask you to find out what is the ultimate load of the footing. In that case, what you can do is, you have to plot the same load settlement curve. Okay, you find out what is you can plot it in semi-log plot, log plot, okay, so that this is in the log scale and this is also in the log scale. Then what happens, you get a very good bilinear curve. Then corresponding to this, you take, this is the yield point, this is the yield, and this will be the ultimate load of the plate. Now you can correspondingly find out what is the, now you know if it is a granular material, the ultimate load of the plate is known from graph. Now what is the ultimate load of the footing is equal to whatever ultimate load from the plate, you multiply by the width of the foundation by the ratio of width of the foundation to the width of the plate. If it is a granular material, granular soil. In case you got a clayey soil, okay, this is the first one. If it is a clayey soil, the ultimate load of the footing is approximately equal to the, this is for clay. This is how you are going to solve. These are the different varieties of problems that you can expect from plate load test data. Then you got correlation to find out the bearing capacity using correlations. We will try to discuss that in the next portion, the next video. I will discuss about what are the correlations between the SPTN value and the cone penetration value. Then we will see what expressions were given by Teng and others, and also Terzaghi. Then we will try to discuss about what is the codal provisions. In Indian code, what provisions have been given using the n value. Then we have got the last portion which is to be discussed in this particular chapter, that is settlement of footings, how to find out the settlement, immediate settlement and consolidation settlement. That we will be discussing in the next video.